that those individuals that are willing to dedicate themselves to an art over the course of their lifetime have a tendency to be so molded by that art that they are somewhat predictable at this stage. So I would say that however raspy and mean and nasty a bastard Putin may be, he's his own raspy, nasty, mean bastard.
There you go. That's calling the kettle black there. I like it. I do. I like it. We had a couple questions here that kind of go in together here. So let me kind of read these together to you. Any updates on rising sea levels, volcanic activity? Are bots picking up certain areas of the country that might be hit hard, such as Florida, North Carolina, or maybe PNW for volcanoes? And then a second question is, can you talk about the squeeze effect on volcanoes and lava flows?
Sure, and they're intimately related, of course. The squeeze effect is basically, you have to understand that our continents are not giant slabs of rock. They're really thousands of smaller slabs of rock that all decide that they're going to float together for a while. And when the magnetics squeeze on the magnetic parts of the rock and everything that's sitting on them and push them all together, it's kind of like trying to squeeze the whole planet into a smaller space. And that, if the fluid part of the planet rebels, and that's the magma, and it's being squeezed out in areas that it doesn't really want to. Kind of like if you took the jelly donut and got it in your hand and really started squeezing, the jelly stuff's going to come out in areas that had not been intended by the maker of the jelly donut.
Right.
And so we're going to start seeing that, in fact, are seeing it with the new lands off of Tonga. There's now reports of a lot of undersea activity that's, let's see, that would be east of New Zealand, and also in the Indian Ocean. There's also new reports of South Pacific island countries that are in desperate straits and are starting to abandon whole areas, as in to say the whole country is going to shift and they don't know where they're going to go, and there are several of these. Same thing is true with the Maldives and some of the military bases, and our military is now having to take resources from other areas and logistics and start doing things like shoring up breakwaters and providing facilities for ports where the configuration of the undersea areas are changing. And this also relates to, the submarines that are bumping into mountains and all of that, and each other, because all of the situation is changing relative to the volcanoes. And indeed, this was part of the previous reports that we had shown here, that the chemtrail issue may become somewhat moot based on what goes on with volcanoes this year, because if the planet's going to spew out a bunch of volcano ash around and pollute the atmosphere to that degree, you don't have to get up there with your airplanes.
Right, exactly. So it's going to stop all of that as well.
Yeah, indeed, it's going to influence it. We don't know if it's going to seize it up or not, but it certainly shows, and again, this is one of those July 15th to like August 15th, we should see a big bump in this kind of activity. But it's going to be ongoing, and it's going to continue to accelerate, especially over 2010 and 2011.
I've got an interest in the whole glacier thing. I don't know why I'm so attracted to that, but there just seems to be a fascination that I have with the, glacier ice and the melting and the waters and all of that stuff. They're talking about the bacteria in there, since, it's the glacier, the ice is melting, and that bacteria is being released as well into the atmosphere that either is or is not extraterrestrial oriented. And what do you have to say on that?
Well, I'm pretty sure that there always will be extraterrestrial bacteria. We know that DNA exists in space. Even NASA admits that they've found petroleum floating around, kind of free-floating in space. So, no dinosaur rotted up there. But, I'm sure that some level of componentry of the ice includes the extraterrestrial ice comets, they call them. I don't know why they call them that, but they come on in and they melt and then they refreeze on our glaciers. The issue is the magnetic fields of the planet that go out of the North Pole and then loop around in a giant magnetic field to the South Pole. And you can think of this as really what it is, which is a conduit for these extra cold areas of space. Now, the microcomets, the water-based comets, in many cases also carry minerals with them, which make them magnetically influenced, so they go to the North and the South Pole, and so that's why they end up in that particular sets of glaciers. But we also see them in places that are very near to the extent of the atmosphere, such as the Himalayas and the Alps and this kind of a deal. I suspect that there will be some extraterrestrial bacteria. I don't know that its impact is going to be really great. Such other things, though, as the number of people in Alaska that died of the Spanish flu and were simply frozen in shallow graves in the tundra in 1918. So they're thawing out. And there we go. You have the Spanish influenza again.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the principle is the same, and, science takes the latter seriously, so I'm sure they're taking the former seriously. But I don't know that you can do anything about it.
All right, yeah, there you go. What do you think, what role do you think is being played by the Swiss banks in regards to the global control?
Well, we have to look at it this way. Central banks didn't always exist. The real thrust of the central banks in the early 1900s started the whole process that led us into World War I and World War II. So I really think that's the whole point of central banking is enslavement. We need not operate our planet this way.
Oh, I agree. I could not agree with you more. And
hopefully someday we won't.
Well, yeah.
We might wise up,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not always been that way, but...
Right. Well, if you look at things historically and you do some of these mega analysis, one of my favorite guys of all time is Buckminster Fuller, because he was a real sharp fellow and he went through some really nasty times that warped his thinking and clarified it to a great degree. One of the things he did was to do these global resource analysis. And if you do things like that, that is to say, look at large processes over long periods of time, something I got real good at in dealing with large volumes of data for various places like telephone companies and airlines and this sort of a deal, then you see certain patterns emerge. So, for instance, within just the United States history back to, let's say, the 1750s, so before we were really a country, but from the point that we had an organized economy on through to today, we've had 4 sets of paper currency. In those periods of time that we have not had paper currency, we've had basically a gold or silver standard. In all of those 200-plus years that we had a gold or silver standard, we had a total of 5% inflation. Because you couldn't inflate the currency, you had to go dig more gold, which actually required effort. In those periods of time that we've had paper currencies, we've had nothing but trouble. So, obviously, it's not engineered for our benefit. If the government was there to help the populace, they would do everything they could to discourage central banking and banking of any form and rely on a metals situation, because that was the period of time, or that provides the most stability and the most accurate storehouse of wealth over centuries.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so the Swiss and the, Bureau of International Settlements and all of that. And, oh, by the way, it does turn out that indeed our call on this spring with the inauditable word assigned to the U.S. and the government is showing up as everybody says, is there really any gold in Fort Knox? What happened to all of the gold the U.S. used to own? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So that's going to start, again, getting up to the coagulation, and we'll feed that when it comes out that we have very few resources that way.
Exactly. So let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
You had sent out an email that you're taking a break.
Yes.
And would like to have an update on that and when you think you may be going to be starting your reports again. I've had a lot of people that have emailed me wanting some of those questions answered as well. Okay.
Well, initially, there's just a lot of stuff I need to get done, and my associate here, Igor, has some personal business that requires that he be out of state for a couple of months, and so it was a good time to take a little vacation. And then, of course, we ran into the issue of someone running out and posting our copyrighted material. So that affects the latter. When people post the reports out there, we have to write a filter to screen them out. This particular set of reports was rather dire, and it got spread around relatively quickly. So that's going to be a big filter, and it's going to take a while, and I'm uncertain as to when I'll be able to have that done. We had intended to come out in a new format. Our problem is this. When we do our data processing, we basically come up with 3 different data sets. One of them is the immediacy data. The other is the short term, and then there's the long term. The immediacy data goes from about 3 days out to about 3 weeks, and then we have the shorter term from about the beginning of the 4th week out to the end of the 3rd month, and then the longer term data is from the beginning of the 4th month out on basically about 19 months, but it extends some distance beyond that. The largest of those 3 sets, though, is always the immediacy data. And that puts a huge amount of pressure on us to process through that, because basically we're racing time. If we got in a bunch of data to process today, it might be indicating, major occurrence 3 days from now. And so we have to really rush to process through and read it and so on. And that is part of our pressure on both our lexicon and our servers and all of our processing was to race against time with the immediacy data. So we thought, okay, let's save ourselves a whole ton of work since we know that all the stuff in the near term really just contributes to the shorter term data set in the longer term. Let's just process it all in those categories and issue an ebook and come out basically, instead of a subscription, we'll just do our work, write it all up, and then we'll announce, okay, we've got the report done, everybody can go download it, and it'll be done in its entirety. But again, that's now been affected by people out there putting our material out and about as though somehow I am to be the guru or the safe place identifier or something to the whole planet. And it just doesn't work that way, people, and you've seriously damaged our ability to do work in the future because we have to screen out all of this stuff from all these different places. It's a tedious headache that a techie guy would understand.
Well, I have to say I'm very, very disappointed that that has happened, that your reports have got posted. That's why you share your time so freely with all of the interviews that you do with all of the different radio shows that you're on, and
just to keep it off of text, off the net.
Right, and and then you have the Urban Survival and website that you also have, and it's very, very sad. So for anyone that may be listening to this either now or in the archives, if you are posting the Alta reports, we would just kindly request that you don't do that. Because
it actually damages us.
Yeah, because now we have to wait, and now we have all these other things that's going on, and we're not going to be able to get those reports for a while, and some of it is just because you need some time off, but the other is now that you've got to create a whole new format.
Correct, and I have to now write what's known as a regex filter.
Right.
And this particular one is going to be hugely nasty because so much of the report was posted, and it'll probably take well over a month.
Yes.
And I'm not too pleased about it. If that individual wanted to show up in Olympia, I would be happy to invite them to the Aikido mat for a demonstration of my art.
What? Oh, my. I think that was a challenge.
No. I practice the art of peace. I just want to discuss this, their lack of manners.
Oh, there you go. Well, I know we're going to be having you back on again, and it's not going to be necessarily about the Alta reports or anything, but it is going to be certainly with you on, and we're going to have a wide and varied discussion. We will be posting that for you. And
George and I are doing some interesting experiments with new electrics, so we can talk about some of that stuff too in about a month.
I love that, because that is a huge topic right now. Because of the magnetics and the changes and everything, people have to have some way of, producing power or energy, just so that they can, we certainly don't want to go back into the, caveman era, obviously.
So, my wife wouldn't have it. No. That shall not be,
No, there you go. No, and I'm not about using a scrub board to wash my clothes, thank you very much.
Yeah. And that trip down to the river is highly overrated.
It is. Well, as usual, Clif, this has been a total delight. And for updates, you'll be sending out emails. You'll be doing that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, I still have to get at the lexicon. That was about a month's worth of work there, too. And as I go through that, I have to test it out against old data, so I will be sending out emails.
Wonderful, and we will be in touch with you. Clif, thank you again so much for being on.
Anytime at all. Glad to chat with you. It's really great.
I know. I love it. And for the rest of you, don't go away. There's a little bit more coming up right after this. Bye, Clif.
Bye.